Wait, before you comment, I'm not saying the Canucks have screwed themselves over by putting Luongo in the Ring of Honor. That's not what we're talking about here. We're going over two separate Luongo things. One of them is a current events type of thing. The other is an event from a few years ago, that in which screwed the team over, and I cannot believe actually might have been the case. But before we go over to any of that, Luongo, Ring of Honor, LTIR, etc., I just wanted to say there is some drop-in community center hockey going on today on December 1st, and I'm not sure if I am going to attend. The problem is this goes on at the same time the Vancouver Canucks are playing, so if I do go, there is a chance I might miss the Canucks game, and there is a chance that we do not make a post-game video depending on the result. If it's a good win, hyped up win, lots of goals, etc., I might try to force myself to make a video, that in which has been the case before when I miss Canucks games. But if the win is as bad as it was against Washington, where there weren't really too many redeeming qualities and I don't feel like watching the footage again, then we might just skip it out. Of course, that's only going to happen if I actually miss the Canucks game. If I actually watch it, then okay, we'll talk about whatever happens then. But I wanted to talk about the Vancouver Canucks' big announcement from yesterday. The Canucks made a tweet talking about how Roberto Luongo, recent Hall of Fame inductee and the best goaltender the Canucks franchise has ever seen, would be going into the Ring of Honor. Now, this was seen by many people as somewhat of a slap in the face, because wait a minute, Luongo going up in the same territory of greatness as guys like Burrows and Owen and Harold Snaps. I mean, those guys were good, but Luongo is literally the best goaltender the Vancouver Canucks have ever had. Why are you not retiring his jersey number? And after the Canucks' initial tweet got bombarded with negative responses of people saying, hey, retire Lou, retire Lou, retire Lou, they actually deleted the tweet. It's no longer up, but instead, after a few hours, the Canucks reposted pretty much the same tweet saying that Luongo will formally become the 8th member of the Ring of Honor, as he is the franchise leader in wins and in shutouts. Now, this was seen with pretty much the same response from the community. Wait a minute, Roberto Luongo is a Hall of Fame caliber player. Why are you just not retiring the gosh darn guy? And I think the main thought process that the Canucks might have when it comes to not retiring formally Luongo and his number 1 is because of the fact that Kirk McLean also wore number 1. I feel like if that wasn't the case, you probably would have seen Luongo's number retired a lot earlier. But because there were two pretty significant goalies on this team's history block that had that number, it does seem like in some way it would be a conflict of interest. Here are a few tweets that I wanted to read to you when it comes to the Luongo thing, presenting different points of views, because I definitely do think it's important to acknowledge both sides here. Rob the Hockey Guy said this: the Ring of Honor would be a slap in the face. Luongo is a Hall of Famer. He belongs with the Sedins, not Harold Snaps. The stanchion, Wyatt, went out there and said that my view on Luongo is that he's the best goalie the franchise has ever had. Hall of Famer. Sure, he's a Panther boy, but he also has a huge chunk of his heart here. I like a mix of stats and love for the city and the retired numbers. Pavel Bure has seemingly no love for the club. Retire Lou. Rob also said this: I was a big fan of Kirk McLean growing up. I had his poster on my wall. He's a Canucks legend and he was sensational in 1994. But Luongo is the best goalie in franchise history. This is not debatable. Cam says there's no way some people are arguing who was better between Luongo and McLean. I loved McLean. Hell, I wrote a first-year English essay on The Save. But the dude was an .887 tendy for his career with a .423 winning percentage. Luongo is a Hall of Famer. Daniel Wagner wrote an article talking about how when you're a player who is as good and as important to a franchise as Roberto Luongo, going into the Ring of Honor isn't an honor at all. It's an insult. You also had yourselves Don Taylor saying this, so this is the opposite side. No way the Canucks could have retired Luongo's number 1 without insulting Kirk McLean. Ring of Honor alongside Kirk is the right call. Thomas Drance then replies saying that this should have nothing to do with Kirk, totally different calibers of player, and I know it's a long argument that you could go out there and have about this, but part of the reason why I wanted to talk about Luongo today, not just because of the Ring of Honor thing. It's cool, I guess, that he's getting it. I mean, I probably would have preferred him to get his jersey number retired, but The other part about Luongo brought itself up on the radio yesterday when, reportedly, Satyr Shah went out there and dropped a bomb when it comes to Luongo and the recent relationship that he had with the Vancouver Canucks cap. Now, before we read what exactly it was apparently that Satyr Shah said, Luongo's contract was pretty bad, and it was one that I feel like definitely does have its spot in infamy when it comes to both the Canucks and the NHL's lore. Roberto Luongo had a 5.3 AAV deal that started in 2010-2011. It would have taken him till 2021-2022. It was a 12-year deal. And the Vancouver Canucks, during the period in 2013, 14-ish, were trying to trade it away, and Luongo said that his contract sucked, and eventually, after trading Luongo to the Florida Panthers for Jacob Markstrom, Luongo ended up retiring in June of 2019. Now, I'm not smart enough to explain why specifically everything went down the way that it did, but all I do know is that Luongo was on Florida, Luongo retired early, and as a result, the Vancouver Canucks got themselves a recapture penalty. For 3 seasons starting in 2019 up until 2022, the Vancouver Canucks had a cap hit on their salary structure of $3.035 million a year for nothing. This Luongo cap recapture penalty was an absolute crux in the side of the organization for years. $3 million is a pretty solid amount of money that you could use to get an actual player, and the Canucks had this piled up into nowhere because Roberto Luongo ended up retiring early. This is where we read what Satyr Shah apparently said on Sportsnet the other day. Sat just said that the Panthers apparently offered the Luongo contract back to Vancouver before he retired. So, the Canucks could LTIR the contract, but the Canucks declined, because they had other plans that season. And I want you to just look at this for a little bit, because apparently, if we put ourselves back in the time frame of 2019, Jim Benning, Francesco Aquilini, they're at the top of the helm, and they're offered Luongo's contract, so they could LTIR it, so they could put it on the injury reserve and forget about it, so they could actually use that money, the 5.3 AAV, and go over the salary cap by that amount of money. They had the opportunity to be able to do that every year until 2022, which would have been now, and they said no. They said no, and then he retired, and as a result, instead of getting a 5-point-something cap cushion they could use on the LTIR, they get a $3 million cap recapture penalty for letting him go and having him retire. What in the world is this? My gosh, Jim Benning, you screwed yourself over by not doing this move. Now, I know there's a lot of other, factors on this that could have been the reason as to why they didn't do this move. Here's what Wyatt Arndt went out there and said about this. It was always odd that Luongo was the one player who didn't go on LTIR to end his anchor contract. Players out here getting allergic to hockey pucks to end on LTIR, cough cough Marian Hossa, and Luongo with actual hip issues ends up with 2 GMs unable to figure out this easy crap. And I wasn't able to find any more context to this entire thing. People are just going out there and calling out Benning and Weisbrod for not doing this move as reported by Satyr Shah, apparently according to this Twitter account, that in which appears to be anonymous, but at the same time, I mean, it is a very, very strange thing. The Canucks and the Roberto Luongo recapture penalty, it was always a mystery here, just like acknowledging why this went down the way it did. Because other teams, they find the ways to put the guy in the LTIR, Luongo just straight up retired. I think I remember some speculation back at the time, so it was 3 years ago, I don't really remember too fondly, but apparently Luongo might have wanted to work with the Florida Panthers already at that point. Maybe he just wanted to be the GM for Canada and he couldn't have done that while having an active NHL contract, although I don't know what the LTIR would have done for that sort of conversation if he would have been allowed to by then. I'm not really too sure. There are so many layers to this entire thing that it's kind of mind-bogglingly bad to think about that the Canucks had the opportunity to negate a $3 million cap penalty for 3 years, and they said no to that. This team was already so screwed over with the salary cap from Benning and all the BS trades that he made with OEL and all that all of a sudden you have an opportunity to get relief, $5 million a year till 2023, or 2022, excuse me. Sure, you don't prefer to have LTIR contracts on your team. It's not really the most ideal situation, but it's a lot better than the alternative. $3 million holding you down when you're trying to go out there and contend. This was right before the Canucks went to the second round of the bubble playoffs. This was still during the time they're trying to make trades to improve their team in the now. Having an LTIR contract would have helped you out so much in that respect. And if you're trading for a guy like Luongo, you probably would not have even had to give up too much at all. Like, you probably would have gotten a sweetener in that sort of deal, because you would have been doing the Florida Panthers a solid by freeing up a contract spot and taking away a guy that would be placed on their LTIR. So, I don't know. Talk to the console your thoughts, not only about Luongo and the Ring of Honor, but also about Luongo and the cap recapture stuff that apparently the Canucks could have avoided, but they just refused to do so and take on that $3 million AAV cap penalty in exchange. Talk to the console your thoughts. I hope you enjoyed this Beniers Roll 9, and bye.